last year, Gary and Makoto played, and Gary at the end stood up and for 15 minutes, standing in a place similar to this, talked to us a little bit about riffing and jazz. And for some amazing moment, people felt they understood something they had never understood before quite. He brought us in, all of us, into his world, and he got a standing ovation, one of the rare ones. This is not a setup for him to get another one. But when I asked him to come back, he said, sure, if I can give another lesson. So Makoto and Gary are going to play. At the end, Gary's going to give us another lesson. And I probably, just because I love telling the story, sometime we'll tell a little story of Makoto and Herbie later on, about Makoto and Herbie and their 350-mile apart concert and riffing they did at the Kobe conference, one from Tokyo and one in Kobe, probably later on this evening. Anyway, my good friend Makoto, Gary Burton.
Well, actually, Richard made a request when we talked on the phone a few months ago that it'd be nice if Makoto played a solo piece this year as part of our segment, which is a great idea. Actually, Makoto's made quite a few recordings solo as well as in group situations and so on. So we're going to start with a piece by Makoto, and I want you to tell everybody what it is and what you're going to do. Oh, your mic wasn't on? Oh.
Yeah. Well, this doesn't stay on my shirt, so that's why I'm supposed to wear this so I can put the microphone on this. But that's okay.
Just hold it and make the announcement, and you can put it down.
How about here? Again. Is this okay? Cool. Can you hear me okay? Do I sound okay? All right. Well, it's great to be back here. はい、わかりました。Moshi moshi, yeah. It's great to be back here. This is, I believe this is my 4th TED since the Kobe TED. And I didn't think that I was going to be talking before I play, but since I've done so many opening acts, this is going to be another one of those that I haven't done in years. And I picked a standard tune, which I recorded with the drummer named Peter Erskine and the bass player John Patitucci. They're wonderful musicians, and this great standard called All of You.
Great.
Okay. Well, the one difference from what Richard said is that the talking part is now, and then we'll play some more again at the end. Last year, if you were here, you'll remember that I talked about how we, in fact, tell stories as we play, and I thought it was great that this morning Jackie Torrance happened to make a reference to the similarity between music and storytelling, because it's a very excellent comparison of the two. We thought this year we can switch to the computer screen now, as a matter of fact. This year we would talk about how we play with each other and how we communicate with you, which is another aspect of what we do up here. And I don't know why, driving cars seems to have become a theme of this event. Not only are the General Motors cars here, but I think this is the fourth presentation that's made some analogy to driving a car, Peter Bergman being the last one just earlier today. But we came prepared with our car story as well. We have a musical conversation that's similar to the spoken conversation with one difference. When you talk to people in words, you have to take turns speaking. You have to wait while the other person responds, and then it's your turn, and so on. In the musical situation, we have this great luxury of being able to both talk at the same time. And so even though we're listening to each other and responding to each other, we're also continually doing it. So there's much more sense of interplay and a continual flow going, because you don't have this stopping and starting effect that happens in language. And so the interactivity creates more opportunity for spontaneity, for things to happen at the same time, and so on. Now, one of the points I made last year, which I have to sort of reiterate this year, is that a lot of what we do is an automatic kind of function. Like in speaking, you don't think about nouns and pronouns. You just think of the point you want to make, and the words kind of form themselves in your brain and start coming out with our language ability. And it's the same with music. And in fact, another great analogy is driving a car. And if you think about it, something we all do in a very automated way. When you're driving a car, you don't think about the gas pedal and the brake pedal and the turn signal and so on. Usually you think about mundane things, and you have a central game plan of some kind. It's in the back of your mind. Let's say the example is you're hungry and you decided to drive 10 blocks down the street to the McDonald's and have a hamburger. So what's driving this whole operation in your brain is hamburger. I want to get a burger. So you get in the car and you turn it on, and there's a friend with you, so you're conversing with the friend, you're playing with the radio controls, you're pulling out into traffic, you're still talking, you're driving. You're not thinking about foot pedals and steering, and you're not even thinking about checking the mirror. This is all happening automatically. A part of your brain, the subconscious part, is guiding the driving while you're busy socializing. And you continue on down the street. Eventually you get to the restaurant, turn signal goes on, you pull in, and all that time you've just been focused on getting that end result to happen. And rarely does the conscious mind actually jump into the process. Most of it happens subconsciously, unconsciously. And that's a lot of how we play. We get started and the flow gets going. That's how musicians describe it. And we don't think about all the particulars of the road and the terrain because we're so used to driving that we can do that part without thinking. And later I'll talk about what we do think about. And when we play the song, which I think this is one of the questions that non-musicians always ask me, is they say, well, how do you know where you are? Or how do you stay together? My father used to come up after I would play, and he'd see a piece of music on the stand, and it would be one sheet with just a few things written on it, and we'd play for 10 minutes. And he'd say, well, you know, how can that be? That's not 10 minutes worth of music. And in jazz music in particular, what we're doing is playing over and over on a small piece of music. And in a way, it's like a kind of a, this is why I picked this car example. It's like a racetrack that we're going to go around, and this course has certain characteristics as we go around that we're going to acknowledge in our playing. And there will be a tempo, which is the speed we're going to drive, and there will be a feel to the song, which is kind of the feel of the terrain, and there will be different kinds of scenery along the road. And each song kind of has its own particular pattern and course. So we have an example here of how this works. Picture us as if we're two stunt drivers, really skilled professional drivers, and we're going to both be driving along on this road, kind of weaving in and out and twisting and turning and challenging each other and inspiring each other to try more and more daring things, but all the time in control and handling it very professionally as we work our way around the course. So we're going to show this to you in terms of a song, which is called All Blues. It's a very traditional common jazz piece which is made up of 12 measures of music, so it's fairly short, as written by Miles Davis. And the tempo and the feel of it is, it's got a 6/8 time feel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just play this background, Makoto. Feel of the song rhythmically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it feels like a waltz. And this is the tempo it's at. And it's a blues, so already we have a dominant 7 kind of chord. If you're not a musician, it doesn't matter that you know that word, but it sets up a sound that sounds bluesy to our ear. And if we use bluesy notes such as the flat 3, sounds even more bluesy to our ear, and the flat 5. All right, that should sound blues to people, to all of you, whether you're a musician or not, right? That's the characteristic of this song. Now, as we follow the course, we're going to have changes from time to time in the color of things that we will address. So can we have the racetrack up there? There we go. Keep going, Cato. Now, this is our first harmony down there where we're starting. This is G7. The change that happens is when we get to, it goes to minor. Sound again. Right. Now, for contrast, almost every piece of music you play has something that changes and surprises the listener in order to keep from becoming too predictable. In this case, we're going to go to some very dissonant chords, which will be a contrast to what we've been hearing up to now. Back to the first one again. Okay, now this time I'll do it in the actual tempo that the song goes in, and I'll play the written melody that Miles Davis wrote for this song. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. The change first. Okay, now you see how how we got around the song and what the elements are to it. So each time you hear us play through it, you should be able to follow where we are on the course and hear those chords change. Now this time, instead of playing the original melody, we're going to make a vibraphone solo. So I'll just make up my own melody following the same set of chords. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I tried to use contrast. Some things were faster, some were slower. Some were louder, some were softer. Some were more rhythmically predictable, some were unpredictable. As many things as I can make contrasts in, that makes it more interesting to the listener and holds your attention. And I'm also trying to develop themes and repeat things so that you sense that a storyline is being developed. All the while, I'm immersing my feeling in this style and the mood of this song because I'm trying to capture that, which is what the things we talked about at the beginning. Now Makoto's going to solo, and I'll play background parts. You have one more pass around, David? Or is that the last one?
Go back.
Better wait for the computer to go back here. High tech. Okay, here we go, Katie. On 4, 5, 6. David Mash, by the way, I forgot to introduce him at the beginning. He's that dreaded title, the Chief Information Officer at Berkeley College, and he's helped us with this. And we'll switch to the Vision software now. We'll show you another way of looking at what we're doing using a different computer program. It's called Vision by Opcode. So this time, Makoto will play the background through, and I'll solo. And we'll take a look at what that looks like on the graph. Oh, we have to get a count off from the computer. Go ahead. Hey, we're in the right tempo. You should be able to see that the dark color, sort of purple, is the vibraphone part, and the green constant thing is the background of the piano. Got both of them in there? Yeah. No, there's the piano part, and there's all of them. And you can see how my part comes in and out, goes up and down, and so on. Can you play that back? next time, Makoto will solo. And why don't you play single line and I'll play the background. 1, 2, oh, the computer has to count off, sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one looks. You did a lot more than I did. Okay, once again, you see the accompaniment part is a very steady pattern, and you can see the rise and fall of Makoto's solos there. Shall we hear that? Here, maybe just hear the piano part. Oh, oh. Okay, let's do one more example where we both solo. If you'll play the background down below us, and then we'll both play interweaving lines. Okay, one more time, David. 4, 5, 6. This should be interesting. Well, now just go with that. See how that works. We can also display that in written notes. This one might look fairly complicated. We'll just take a quick look at it. If you're used to reading music, what it would look like. Now, it actually would need to be cleaned up a little bit from there. That Dave is already cleaning it up there. That's more like it would actually look in written music. Where you're just changing a note there?
Play wrong.
Oh, wrong. Hey, fixing a wrong note. That's all right. Okay. Well, I hope that gives you the idea of, the shapes that we use and how we listen to each other and, respond to each other simultaneously while we're both following the structure of this song. And each song we play has its own unique structure, its own unique patterns, and so on, and we adjust our parameters to follow whatever the roadmap calls for. Let's move on now and talk about, we can go back to the other program now, David, yeah. how the communication happens. We're talking about nonverbal communication here, and there's been a lot of references to jazz, music, and creativity recently. Lots of books coming out about jazz and leadership and so on. In fact, John Cowell's book, I'll give him a plug because he didn't ask me to, but I thought it was a terrific book called Jamming that really described the musical side of things and related it to business management in an extremely understandable and clear way, I thought. And each speaker's getting a copy of that. Okay. Oh, good. And I've already read mine, but I'll take it anyway. And I can tell you that I never dreamed that people would start asking me about business management as a jazz musician. I mean, this is really an unexpected development in my life. And there have been a lot of insights, even just this conference, into how creativity works. But I think there's an aspect of it that I haven't heard mentioned yet, and that is that creativity is, certainly from the artist's point of view, performance-driven. I'll tell you a story that George Burns used to tell, and it's about a vaudevillian, an old vaudevillian who died, and when he woke up, he was on a stage, and he discovered that his memory was filled with thousands of fantastic jokes, every one of them incredibly funny. He could sing like Al Jolson. He could dance like Fred Astaire. Everything he'd ever imagined as an entertainer suddenly was his. And he said to himself, well, I guess I've gone to heaven. And then he realized there was no audience. And that's how we feel as performers. We don't play for each other, and we don't play for our own amusement. It only makes sense if there's someone listening. And the more, I think, experienced you become as a performer, the more that is the central issue. And so it's a kind of a complex thing that's going on. We're having a conversation up here, and it's fun for us, and it's exhilarating often, and we're communicating with each other and so on, but at the same time we're acutely aware that you're listening to us. It's sort of like we're on Crossfire, only we're not arguing, but we're having this intense conversation, and there's millions of people watching us have the conversation. So in fact, our attention is as much on you as it is on our conversation. We're dividing our thoughts here. And that causes us to adjust subtly and unconsciously how we play in a few different ways. The first one is we decide how loud we need to play based on what our ears are telling us about the acoustics of the room. If I feel it's, filling the room, then I know that I'm at the right volume level. If it sounds like it's not really reaching out there, I don't hear it bouncing back at me, then I play a little louder. Or if that doesn't do it, I'll stop and ask the mic guy to turn it up even. But I'm aware of that because I'm paying attention. I'm thinking of, well, I need to reach all of you. And I also we'll adjust how we pace our phrases. And that also is kind of an acoustic thing. If it's a very echoey room or there's distractions going on, background noise and so on, I'll leave more spaces just instinctively between the melody phrases that I play, because something that was quick and subtle would get lost because of the distraction. And vocabulary. I adjust what I play based on kind of a subjective judgment of who's listening. It's the same thing happens in speaking. In fact, I'm doing it here today even. If I'm talking about music to a group of musicians, then without consciously being aware of it, I use a lot of musical terms because I know they'll understand them, and it makes my job easy. On the other hand, if I'm asked to talk about this, say, which I have occasionally, say at the PTA where my kids go to school, and it's what do you do for a career day, and I'm talking to all these people who are not musicians, then again I make an unconscious adjustment, and I don't use musical terms. I use everyday language, as I'm trying to do today. for instance. And we do the same thing when we're playing. Our vocabulary shifts and changes based on our perception of who's listening. Now, admittedly, this is not a perfect science, making this judgment. I can tell you that I play differently in the Blue Note in New York City than I do in the high school auditorium in Vermilion, South Dakota. I'm making a quick judgment that the South Dakotans are not going to be as experienced jazz listeners as the ones in New York. I may be wrong, but I'm making that assumption. I'm also looking at people in the audience and getting opinions, visual impressions, everything about how they're moving, whether they're paying attention or not, how they're dressed, how they look, everything. I'm getting all kinds of signals. It tells me how to shape what I play. And we make these adjustments without thinking about it. Like I say, I don't stop and talk to myself about it. I just look out and say, okay, this is the environment I'm in, this is who I'm communicating with, and then I immerse myself in the tune, keeping half my attention on what we're doing, half on who I'm sending it out to, because I want to connect with you. And this is all part of, I think, what the artist is motivated by. So I said it's performance driven. There's a saying that when artists dream, they dream of money. But in truth, what's closer to the truth is when artists dream, they dream of adulation, and we assume the money's going to come after that. Because we want to be loved. We want to be understood, respected, and we want you to, sort of join our obsession and our quest for this. So we really want to communicate to you. Michael Tilson Thomas, the conductor, was quoted once as saying that when he performed, he wanted every single person to get it, to love the music. Now, that's an impossibility. It's never going to happen. And yet, that's what it feels like. It's this constant quest to reach everyone, to communicate with every single person that could be hearing you at that time. Now, I don't know how creativity works exactly in business, but I think, know a lot about how it works among musicians. And an advice I can give you is, from our standpoint, is don't make the mistake of performing for the band. What I mean by that is there's a temptation with musicians sometimes to play for each other. They focus their attention on the other players in the band, their friends, their peers, people they feel comfortable with, and so on, people they rehearse with all the time, and so it's a comfortable thing once they get out on the stage to do the same thing. And I can notice this when I'm in an audience watching a group play. I can tell whether they're playing for each other or whether they're playing for me. And imagine the difference, for instance, if that's 5 people, like a typical band, and let's say there's 5 people over here, and they're having a conversation, and you're eavesdropping. They're talking to each other, and you're just kind of listening from the side. And then imagine that they all turn and face you directly and start talking right at you. How much stronger that would be. Well, that's the difference. Keep in mind who the audience is, something we have to constantly tell ourselves, that who we're playing for. It's not just each other, it's everyone that's out there. And the longer I play, the more that becomes the only challenge. That is the focus. And I realize that probably 5% of audience is made up of musicians. The other 95% are not musicians and don't actually speak the language. They don't know the names of the notes, the names of the chords, the technical part that's going on. So it's an interesting thing. I'm trying to communicate to you in a foreign language that you don't understand. And I'm giving you impressions and colors and changes and mood changes and so on in order to give you the impact of what I'm doing, and yet you don't know the specifics of it. Only the 5% who are musicians will know the specifics. And so it differs in that respect with language. It's less specific than language. So probably that's enough about all that. We should get back to playing now. And the song we're going to do next is based on the same principles of what we were showing you before. We have roadmaps for this song. It's a little more complicated because this song has a lot of different sections to it, but each section is like a song in itself. This is a composition of Makotos, and so it moves around a bit, a little more complicated, and it's called Cato's Revenge. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.